Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 Index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed on Nasdaq. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining us this Friday afternoon, we have Sara Mehle. She's ESG Index Strategist with Nasdaq Global Indexes to discuss the Nasdaq-100 ESG Index. Sara, it's great to have you back with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Hey, Jill. Great to see you on this Friday. And as you mentioned, we are discussing the Nasdaq-100 ESG Index today, which simply takes the Nasdaq-100 Index and applies an ESG screen each quarter. So ESG meaning environmental, social, and governance. And what this is going to do, it's going to screen out those names that maybe don't meet the ESG risk factors that we're screening for. And with this most updated or quarterly evaluation, we had 7 names that just were not included in the Nasdaq-100 ESG Index. 2 of those names were just because they didn't have ESG risk scores, and then the other 5 just did not meet the ESG criteria. But there is one exchange-traded fund that tracks this index, and that's going to be the Invesco ESG 100, the Invesco Nasdaq 100 ESG ETF, excuse me, QQMG is the symbol. Yes, so this is an index where you can take, innovation and overlay that with sustainability.
Yeah, sometimes the Nasdaq 100 ETF trackers, they get a little bit tricky with trying to fit all that in there. That said, I want to pull up your first 2 slides here. Just want to get a quick overview of what you mentioned. We could take a look at what some of the criteria is, and then the second one will show some performance.
Yep, so again, like I said, we take the Nasdaq 100 index on a quarterly basis, screen it using Sustainalytics ESG data with that ESG overlay, and with this most recent evaluation, 7 names did not make the cut. So again, 2 of those names were just because there are no ESG risk criteria available. The other 5 did not meet the criteria. So what this gives us is, a little bit smaller of a universe there, but that makes our universe a little more aligned with an ESG portfolio. So the performance, looking back to the end of or the beginning of 2021, we have seen the Nasdaq ESG 100 index outperform the Nasdaq 100 by 2%. We have seen some underperformance when we compare that to the S&P 500 benchmarks, but that we've seen technology really underperform here over that time period, so that does make sense. But really, I think the important story here is the long-term picture. Looking at a back test going back 5 years to the beginning of or the end of March, we really have seen the Nasdaq 100 ESG Index outperform, beating that S&P 500 ESG benchmark by over 100%, and leading as well the Nasdaq 100 Index. So we really have seen that long-term story, benefit from adding that ESG screen, and this is just a great way to again mix innovation with sustainability.
And finally, let's wrap up and take a look at some ESG risk score comparisons.
Yeah, so when we take the holdings within each of these respective benchmark indexes and we compare it to that Nasdaq 100 ESG index, we're able to take a weighted average ESG risk score using Sustainalytics data. The lower the score here means that it's more aligned with an ESG strategy, or lower is better, basically. And so here we see that the Nasdaq 100 ESG index has that lower score of 18.5 when we look at a weighted average. The Nasdaq 100 index has that weighted average of 20.5, and then looking at the S&P 500 ESG index benchmark, that's up at 20.8. So what's really nice to see there is that even without that ESG overlay, we are seeing a little bit the Nasdaq 100 showing even more of an ESG, a better picture there when compared to the S&P 500 ESG benchmark. But overall, we have seen that removing those names does lower that risk score, does align that more with an ESG strategy. And again, the Invesco ESG Nasdaq 100 Index, symbol QQMG, is the ETF that tracks this index.
All right, Sara, we appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.